Ciao ragazzi and welcome to the latest episode of the Fratelli D'Rugby podcast. I am your co-host Marcello and I am joined as ever by my two brothers Mike and Ottavio. Gentlemen, how are we? Are we good? Are we feeling good?
Ciao March. Yeah, everything good. Happy to see you again.
Are you feeling better now, Ottavio? Because you weren't very well for a while, were you?
Seems like, yeah. So that's why I'm saying it seems to be everything good now, because still a little bit of cough, still a little bit like that, but much better than last week. I was supposed to travel and then I stay home, so much better now.
Good to see you rested. Mike.
Hello. How are we?
Are you good, son? I'm good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good. Yeah, mate. Yeah, pumped. Nice weekend. Looking forward to this one.
Absolutely, yes.
That's a huge one.
We're Thursday. We've got the teams. Obviously, World Cup final, which we will talk about a little bit later. Very much looking forward to that. But we will start with the URC round number 1, done and dusted. And it's fair to say it was one of the more exciting rounds from an Italian perspective. 1 win, 1 defeat, which we've maybe become quite used to, with Benetton often getting the win. And Zebre, having spent all season losing last season, came within 1 play of winning in the first round at home against Ulster. So 36-40, going down to the last play and knocking it on at the vital moment. So bitterly disappointing and heartbreaking for Zebre. However, Mike, I think it's very fair to say that what we saw was 1, very positive, and 2, very exciting, because Zebre were, especially in that first half going forward, were fantastic, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those where we've seen what Zebre can do at their best. There was, sparkles of it of last season, but it seems that with the coaching change and with some of like the young players being promoted and this incredibly long pre-season that we've had, they're starting to gel, and it's starting to show a little bit more. The knock on at the end obviously comes down to decision making, and it's a young team, and let's face it, like it was the wrong decision. But yeah, that would have been a famous victory, and who knows? Hopefully it's good signs of things to come.
Yes, so that what Mike's talking about there is, if you haven't seen the game, Zebre have Ulster right on the back foot, 5 meters out for a good 3 or 4 minutes. Win scrum penalty after scrum penalty. Ulster get a sin bin, and then rather confusingly, Zebre go for the tap penalty and knock it on. Ottavio, I imagine you were ripping your hair out at that point.
Yeah, it was a bitter moment, because the game was really exciting. We saw the Zebre leading the game for a long time. Then they went down, but they were fighting, and they fight the full 80 minutes. Something really different from a result really close. That was the first match last year, when they fight back against Leinster in the opening last year. But this time they start scoring from the beginning. They weren't behind, trying to follow after Leinster put the bonus point on in the first half. Zebre did it actually in the first half, which was great to see. And exciting at the end, but frustrating. Yes, of course, frustrating, but good stuff. I saw good stuff from a lot of players, so, and that was good. The style was good. Was nice to see him.
It was, and I think very entertaining. Obviously, they take 2 points from it, so it's not the end of the world, that result. And I think maybe if you'd said that before the game, Mike, some of them would have probably been quite content with that. But I guess the nature in which you lose, when you lose like that, is a harder one to swallow. But sort of that first half in particular, it was very much a case of defence was optional, wasn't it? Because in 20 minutes there was, I think, 6 tries in the opening 20 minutes. So it was chaos. But my God, Zebre looked very, very, very sharp.
yeah, it also goes to show what potentially the national team could do with a really good kicker, like someone who's able to kick a lot and kick for territory and play in the right areas as well. So if we're saying Zebre align quite a lot to how the national team currently are, like give it a crack type mentality. It was nice to see some structure, some some game management there as well. But yeah, man, Zebre have 2 points, which I think Otto, if correct me if I'm wrong, I think they got 8 last season. Is that right? So they're already doing quite well with regards to sort of in comparison to last season. And who knows, man? Like they play like that against some of the teams that are perceived closer to their level. They're going to cause what most people would consider an upset, but these boys have been doing it all preseason, ready for this moment. So yeah, I expect them to win a fair few games this season.
Oh god, yeah. On the back of that, they got to think that they're gonna do much better than last season. Ottavio, for you, take us into the stats. What did the stats tell you? What interested you most from that game? Go on.
Okay, so I have the URC official information that is really interesting to read because the set piece was key, something that they struggle, and the scrum. Even when they brought into Pitinari and Asa switching position from 1 to 3, from 3 to 1, that was a big call. That wasn't expecting when I saw the team, and it was great to see in that way. But also the line out, they were able to steal a line out with Jack Ferrari, and 100% of success of the line out throw from the hookers, something that we really miss last year for Zebre, and we saw that, and it was great. And then they kick a lot, 27 kicks during the game, and this is an interesting way they're kicking too, because they're always trying to push pressure on them, starting to create from a line out from the next kick, and that was great. And what else I can tell you? A couple of stuff about the drivers of play of Zebre. We saw Guido Volpi at the number 6. There was the most used player of 9 with 8 carries, 12 pick and go, 2 kicks, like Fusco did, 2 grabber kicks by the 9 and 2 box kick. And then the rest of the things I can say is that Zebre play more of 10 than everything, and when they play off 12, so when they play with look-in, they go or for the crash ball or is a set piece pass. So that's a little bit of Zebre stats for Fratelli di Rugby. And thanks for Longo Match, because Longo Match, as usual, helps me collecting data when I need it. So thanks Longo Match for supporting me.
Good plug. Well done. Well done, you.
Yeah,
Stat
that's
man.
it for now.
Stat
For
man.
Zebre,
Okay.
but man, was we saw new players too in Zebre. The new players from the Southern Pacific. So we saw Scott Gregory and Fetuli Paea, the Tongan player. So new faces. We saw Cambriani, and come on, pretty good for the first game in the yellow and blue jersey, I think. What do you guys think about them?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hugely excited. Mike, for you, players that stood out.
Yeah, it was nice to see some leadership from Licata. He
Ligada,
looks like
good.
he looks pretty good. It's good to see him back off an injury, and I know he's been captaining sort of pre-World Cup, but it looks great. CC back, initial impact. I think he scored the first try from memory off the maul.
Yep.
It just seems like the balance is better. So like we can highlight a lot of different players, but it just seems like that it's more cohesive as a team.
Yeah.
You know how I feel about Pani as well. I think he looked like he had a bit about a bit between the teeth. Like even when he scored, he seemed angry. Do you know what I mean? It just looked like they had something to prove, and they were driven by something else. And there's a lot of frustration from the last 2 games in Italy, and a lot of these young players probably feel like they want to try and sort of show what the next generation is about, and give a lot of the fans a bit of light at the end of the tunnel type situation. And I think these players feel it in their skin, and like I said, it looked different. The impetus looked different. It looked more concise, and yeah,
Mike,
I'd hate to highlight one player.
Mike, how
Yeah,
much was like to see Gabin Villiers when Jesse scored the try from set piece,
mate,
fighting against everybody to score over the
that
line.
strength. What a wiry little genuinely. The initial contact was what 5 yards out, 6 yards out, and he still broke 2 tackles. Like, that guy is strong, man. Like, he's so strong.
Yeah,
He doesn't look it at all. He looks so weak. But they tend to be those players that are just the strongest, because they're just impossible to put down. I'm glad you said it, because I was going to pick him out as well. But I think I wasn't too aware of Lorenzo Pani before we started talking, Mike, really. But he is quickly becoming my favourite player alongside Menoncello, because he's got that class about him. He's got that little bit of pizzazz, shall we say. He just looks the real deal, and he looks like a really confident player as well. It looks like maybe being at that World Cup has given him that extra little bit of motivation to really kick on this season.
Yeah,
and he said that the way he play is more instinctive, but during the week he'll try to work a lot on the fundamentals, on the basics, on the skills, and also he preferred to play 15 than 14. He said it in the podcast with us, with Mike too, and he preferred to play 15 so he can decide where to go, what to do. I want to drive more the game, which is great, because for example, Zebre is using him as the first kicker from exit strategy, because he's such a really long boot, his left, that he kicks a lot far away.
Yeah. And I don't know whether you've got the stats to back this up, Ottavio, but the speed of ball from Garcia looked really good as well, like in terms of really quick, especially when Zebre got into that 22, the ball seemed to be moved very, very quickly.
Yeah, I don't have the stats for that, but I can tell you that what it looks like. Also, Garcia was really missed last year because he was a quality player. If he was fit, maybe it was him and not Lautaro Bazanvelez, the other 9 for the Pumas, in my opinion, because he was really good. He's good when he picked the ball. He tried to box kick in the right way, and he knows how to keep momentum on. Something that they need a lot for this style of play, the Zebre.
And how close might you think that? Obviously, Jezzy had such a good season last season. He was up there, and he was in the team of the season, wasn't he, for the URC? That was last season, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think he definitely was. What Otto said, he had the best strike rate of any Italian player in the URC. I think any Italian player.
He was the top Italian scorer last year.
Yeah.
He can't be far away. He can't be far away from being given a proper chance in the national side, can he?
He's just a ball of chaos, isn't he? He's just one of those players where you just have to unleash and just let him do his bits. But against my and I suppose I'll caveat this with my concern is the same way I love Pani because I think he's a really well-rounded player. I don't know how well Jezzy is rounded. I don't really see him kick that often unless it's an up and under or a grubber that he's chasing himself. I don't know how he can kick for territory. I don't know how good he is in the air if there's going to be some bombs going up and they're targeting him like we saw against Ioane. But yes, in terms of talent, like I'd love to see him in the mix. I'd love to see him try and push through, and the other stuff can be taught, I suppose, and that's really dependent on Quesada and what he sees. But is he good enough to play? From what we've seen, yes. Like Bruno is playing for Italy, and Jez, you could potentially take his teammate's spot, you know. So yeah, I'd love to see it, you know.
And from one side that almost won and almost basically, I think it'd probably be harsh to say gave the game away, to one side that snatched it right at the death. Benetton beating Cardiff Blues by a single point in Cardiff. Ottavio, we've spoken quite a lot in terms of the national team, in terms of Benetton, in terms of Zebre. Finding ways to get results away from home is so important to the development of both of these franchises, and with a view to the national side. So for Benetton to start the season with an away win, that's huge for them, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we were expecting the victory. Actually,
Yeah.
when we were speaking in the preview of the season, with a victory away can be massive and is massive. Think about playing with Drago, playing with Zulian and Itzekor, Spagnolo from the beginning. At the end, there was a great way to start, even if maybe the style of play we saw was a little bit rough. Was starting to grow, the attack of Benetton with the new coach with Troncon. But hey, I saw a good impact from the bench, because when Albornoz came in, he was playing as a center, I can say, like a 12, because he attacked the line every time, and Umaga Keep was the number 10. He kicked well, and Uran kicked really well. Speaking about kicking game, they were perfect. They retained more than every team in URC this week with 6, and Uran did a really contestable kick. So everything was pretty good. Rough, the attack, the general move of attack, gameplay, face play, but great, and line out good, scrum pretty good. Let's move, let's go. And they weren't the top team, because Zebre maybe is missing a couple of players, maybe Morisi, Paul Ledri, great players, but Benetton has almost the full national team out.
Yeah.
Negri, Lamaro, Ense, Gallo, and other ones, just to say. Fikitoa, come on.
Sure,
So
Mike.
great.
I guess that's one of the big positives, is that maybe Benetton weren't at their absolute best, and there's still, like Ottavio said, a lot of players to come back in. So for the squad as a whole, that's the best possible way to start, isn't it?
Yeah, and you know, there's one player. As much as I said I don't want to single out one player, there is one player that I'd like to single out for Benetton, and I think he was very, very close to being picked pre-World Cup. But Drago looked amazing. I thought he controlled the game really, really well. I'm really looking forward to seeing how he progresses. But you know, it's to the point where these players are going to have to step up because of the international window, and you know, the long pre-seasons benefited Benetton massively. You know, there's some team cohesion there, regardless whether the Italians are there or not, as in the national side. And you know, these young players have an opportunity, and hopefully it's going to make Bortolami's decisions really tough and give him a bit of a headache, because that's the only thing that we can hope for if we want a competitive national side and a competitive URC franchise, both sides, is that the selection is hard every single week, and hopefully we're at a point where even the youngsters are making those decisions really, really hard for them.
And that's the key, isn't it? In all sport, having competition for places is nothing but a good thing, is it? It's a headache for the coach, and probably something that will give him sleepless nights, but it's definitely a positive, because Ottavio, a lot of these players, especially at Benetton, whilst the internationals are out, are trying to play for a place when they all come back in. I guess this is a chance for some of those players to put their hand up, I guess, and kind of get their way in.
No, we saw different options in speaking about the Italians in the team, like playing with Itzekor at 6, at we at 7, Zuliani. It's something that we are expecting to see on the next level, no, for Italy in some occasion. If it's not gonna be the Six Nation, I think it's gonna be the summer where they're gonna start some games, maybe together, maybe with another Zebre player, maybe with Polledri, who knows. So let's see what they can do, because they like the front row was great. Think about Spagnolo was at the debut at the international level, club level, because he came from Petrarca last year. He was one of the youngest prop number one. So yes, Zilocchi was back after 2 years without playing. Actually, he played last time for Zebre before moving to Irish and never playing due to injuries. And there was Lucchesi. So these players are there. Maybe Lucchesi next week can rest, and they're gonna have Nicotra starting. I mean, Nicotra is the one that brought the scrum forward, the line out for Italy, because nobody was there. So great to see Lucchesi back. No, great. And Drago, come on, we want more Drago in this Italy.
Mike, Lucchesi was someone you, before we started this evening, was someone you were very excited about.
Yeah, I just think, like, for us to have a competitive, again, thinking of Benetton and thinking national side, the amount of players that they contribute, for us to have a successful national side, and traditionally we've struggled at set piece. He's so good, and it definitely looks like he's comfortable enough to run it around the park. I know our stat man is going to probably talk about him in some detail, so I'm not gonna speak about that side. He just looks back, and for someone to have such a serious injury and be out for so long, normally there's that fear, and we see it all the time, and he just hasn't. He's just hit the ground running. He seems super confident, and he was forced to do 78 minutes. The poor Bernasconi got injured almost like immediately after coming on, and he had to come back on. So, yeah, I mean, Otto, I'll pass it to you, because I know you've got some brilliant stats on him. So
go, Statman, go. Take it
so
away.
about to speak about how the way he plays. Usually, Lucchesi is the first carrier after the central crash ball from line out. So every time Benetton attacks, they go in the middle of the field, and usually they play with the second phase of attack with Lucchesi catching that ball. But not only there, because we saw Lucchesi scoring, tackling 22 times, and that is a crazy stats. He scored one try, and he was used so many times carrying the ball, because we saw like 10 times. So the most used forward by Benetton of 9, and he was also used 6 times as a second receiver into contact. So at the end, he carried the ball almost 16 times, and that's crazy. Thinking about it was the first game from back from injury, so brilliant game from him, and 100% line out throw success.
and missed
Another
0
good,
tackles.
yeah. And you can watch it, guys, because I did a video about I make a video about his performance on YouTube. So that's something more.
Absolutely. Well, I can think after what was probably a pretty tough 2 weeks for the national side at the end of that World Cup campaign, last weekend was a big boost and a major improvement, and something for us all to get very excited about indeed on the club. So, gentlemen, I think we'll move this forward unless you have anything else you want to add on the past weekend.
More looking forward to the next game, because it's gonna be Osprey's Zebre. So it's gonna
It's another
be
chance for
interesting.
Zebre, I think.
Yeah, another chance. The worst line out is by Ospreys now. So it's something that can be really attacked by the Zebra, and then let's see how they're gonna play and what kind of team. If Maurice start playing, training, so let's see if he's gonna be in the team this week for Zebra. And on the other side, Munster is gonna come to Treviso. So maybe it's gonna be the first Fakey Does game, which is gonna be something huge if we're gonna see him, maybe Paulo Dogu, but the players are coming back and it's a home game, so who knows, maybe they can do it against the current champions. Munster looks really sharp last week, honest, I have to say that, but I saw how they play against oh my god, I don't remember against who they play. Well, anyway, I'm mixing two games together, but yes, it was good to see them. Edogbo, see Carberry playing well, but they can do anyway because they have Albornoz, Sumaga, and everything. So hopefully everything is gonna be a double win.
They beat the Sharks.
The Sharks, sorry, yeah, the Sharks. Beat the
34-21.
Sharks.
I guess now that I'm on that, I'll probably run through the other results. Connacht beating Ospreys in Ireland. Dragons losing out to Edinburgh. The Lions and the Stormers were involved in a pretty decent game, 33-35 that finished. And then the Bulls thumping Scarlets 63-21 on the Sunday. And Glasgow beating, you look at Glasgow 43, Leinster 25 and think, oh my goodness, but Leinster are obviously without basically their first choice and their second choice and their third choice. They were down to their fourth choice pretty much against Glasgow. So
some new
that
phases.
was that. And as Ottavio said, this week, Zebra go to Swansea on the Saturday and Benetton host Munster on the Sunday. So let's look back at the week. We've obviously international rugby remains the focus. We are coming to the end now of the Rugby World Cup, the final on Sunday. But before we talk about that one, let's maybe talk about the international game as a whole. This week, we've had the news that this, what's it called again? What's the official title?
I think it's World League.
Tier 1 league. No?
Tier 1 league. It sounds so exciting, doesn't it? Wow.
No, World
Not
League.
much imagination went into that one. But yes, we're talking about the World League, the big world superpower Tier 1 league that's going to start. It's 2026, is it?
2026, and then promotion relegation
4 years later.
Yeah, but actually after the fourth year, so it's gonna start in 2031. It's gonna start with promotion relegation.
Mike, your thoughts, because this has obviously blown up quite a lot on social media. A lot of people unhappy that after the World Cup, where we've seen so many of these tier 2 sides playing so well, the fact that they're going to be essentially blocked out of playing any tier 1s until, well, the next 7-8 years. It seems pretty. It's divided opinion, and not a lot of it's been positive. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think sort of first of all, let's just touch upon what has been proposed, right? So what has been proposed is that there will be open tier 1, tier 2 games every 2 years. So that would be in the Lions years, it will be tier 1 versus tier 2. And then pre-World Cup, it'll be tier 1 versus tier 2. And then obviously we'll have the World Cup. I don't know the stats, but I'd love to know how many tier 2 nations, the tier 1 nations, bar Italy, have played in the past 2 years, because Italy has played a lot of tier 2 nations in the past 2-3 years. I'm not sure that it would be as impactful as people first look, because obviously the main tests are typically against, like New Zealand or South Africa, where they'll have 3-game tests. So yes, it's bad, but for me, I think it's taken out of context. I don't think the people who are outraged really sort of fully understand the concept of it. I don't think it's a good idea. If I had to put where I am on it. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it's a good idea for us as Italians, but it almost feels like after me speaking last week about, the Super League and all the benefits, this is why they've done it, right? They've done it because, unfortunately, the Premiership's on their, the RFU are on their knees, WRU are on their knees, Australia are on their knees, South Africa are on their knees. And if any of these big rugby nations go under, World Rugby is going to look pretty shit, to be honest. So they're going to have to try and find a way of, first of all, consolidating it into an attractive tournament, which is away from a World Rugby regulated tournament, so it can be sold to private equity. So this is what I'm assuming is going to happen. They're probably going to package it up, sell, 40% to CVC, Silver Lake, Vista, whichever private equity comes with their hands open with cash. They're going to liquidate that 40% straight away. They're going to give some to the RFU. They're going to give some to WRU, who, let's face it, spent, the vast proportion of their 100 million that they got per year from the Six Nations on building a hotel, just before COVID, and then bail out all the unions. So we're in a financial, relative financial state for the short term. And really what's happening here is they've sold their souls. So that's they've sold their souls. Hey, but it's for the, is it, can we be really candid here, right? Is it more impactful if one or two of the tier 2 nations get one or two less games per cycle against a tier 1 nation, right? Or if South Africa go bankrupt and they can't produce players, if Australia go bankrupt, they can't produce players, like the big rugby nations. That's the trade-off. And I'm not saying one is more important than the other, because we should be looking to develop a global game. But the question is, right, like, what's going to look worse to World Rugby if South Africa go bust and they can't produce players, they don't have a talent pool, they don't have an elite pathway, they can't, support franchises, or if Portugal have one less tier 1 game per year, per cycle, sorry.
I can try to bring the point from the tier 2 side. Here, because I think it's important. The only good thing that is gonna be some regulation about the tier 2 teams that they're gonna play against tier 1. Then let's be honest, how many times it's gonna be like Japan, Fiji, and Italy playing against Georgia, Portugal, Uruguay more than the other teams too, because maybe nobody wants to. They want to sell the big tickets, so part of the tier 1 nation they're gonna play maybe one game. Hopefully every of the top 9 team, let's say, because top 10, so 6 plus Argentina, Uruguay, Argentina, South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand. So let's say them. So you have other 10 teams that they can play. But the fact is, this is gonna apply from 2031. So we are saying actually that we're gonna see again Rafa Storti, Guedes, Martins playing, Echeverri, Rodriguez, all these good players. We're gonna see them again on the big stage, if we are lucky, a couple of times during these years, and then we're gonna see them back with Chile, maybe at the Rugby World Cup. That's why I'm saying this, because we were the team, Italy was the team that played against Uruguay in the last 4 years. The only tier 1 game they had against Portugal, that happened the same. The only Namibia never played against anybody in the last 4 years, and we just touched 3 of the tier 2. But thinking about the only team who really benefits from the last 4 years cycle was Georgia, because they played multiple times against everybody. They were into the Nation Series. So I hope in some way, because they already said like next year England is going to New Zealand, I think, and Wales is going to play with Australia. So how many space is going to be?
Just before we move on, do you know who voted for what?
I've seen it. I've seen on Twitter, but I don't.
Argentina playing against rugby. South Africa, no, South Africa, sorry, South America rugby vote against.
Yeah.
And also because, guys, they were left out from the past. For example, Chile, there was the best team, one of the best, with Uruguay and Argentina. One of the best is a Pacific team. He cannot play against Fiji, Samoa, Tonga, but Canada, yes, is gonna play, and United States, yes, they're gonna play because there's chance for the World Cup to be developed there. There are a lot of more business because we are looking this as a thing for business to save the finances of a lot of federations. So of course there's some money there in the MLR, and they're gonna go with USA rugby.
This is what I find odd though, boys, because if we're looking at who voted for what, right? Yes, all of the tier 1 nations bar Argentina voted for, but then Georgia voted for, Samoa voted for, Tonga voted for, USA voted for, Canada voted for, right? I think Romania was voted against, but the vast, if you were to look at sort of the tier 2 nations, there was one vote for and one vote against in the Asian votes because they got 2 votes.
One and one they did, right?
1 and 1, yeah. So if you're looking at the grand scheme of things, something else has been said behind the doors for Georgia to say, okay, fine, right? They clearly have been promised something else, right? No team. I just don't understand there's probably a carrot being dangled somewhere, right? Whether it's a real carrot or if it's really just a hidden stick, we'll find out. But these, Samoa, Tonga, they don't benefit for voting for unless there's something else that's been said. That's just the way I see it.
Yeah, and I guess we're going to have to wait and see why maybe they did vote for it, because as you said, there must be some reason. I guess the one positive maybe from an Italian perspective as well is that this will also mean that the World Cup will expand to 24 countries in 2027 in Australia. No, it's Australia, the next one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quesada
Australia.
already qualified for playoff part. You see?
Yeah.
How lucky
And
we
so
are.
it will go into a 4 team per group, which hopefully should help us potentially progress from a group stage. So there's also that to think about, isn't there, Mike? That the World Cup will expand, so it will also change not just the way that we play rugby per year, but also the World Cup. What do you think about that as well?
Obviously, expansion has been and should have been a priority for such a long time. I just feel, I don't know, maybe it's a cynic in me. I just feel like the timing is a little bit suspect, man. Like they saw that Canada and they saw that America didn't qualify for this World Cup, and I just, the cynic in me says if this happened last World Cup, this would already have been 24 teams this World Cup, right? If France or Canada didn't qualify. Sorry, if USA and Canada didn't qualify, because that's where the focus lies. They're the sleeping giants. That's where they want to see some sort of growth, and fair play to the USA. Like it's one of the fastest growing sports in the US, rugby. Like they've got a talent pool that dwarfs most of the 6 nations, right? So I get why they've done it. It's just, for me, this should have been done years ago, right? Right.
Yeah,
I'm glad it's happening now, but it's do you know what I mean? It's a little bit suspect.
Yeah,
if I had to put my little tinfoil hat on.
Yeah, it wouldn't be surprised. Take a wild swing at maybe where the World Cup is in 2031.
Yeah.
Wonder where it might be. But yeah, that is something I'm sure we'll talk about more. And generally, it's going to be a conversation had for a long time to come. Yeah. But we will obviously, whilst we're talking about international rugby, like I said, we will touch on the Rugby World Cup semi-finals last weekend, the Rugby World Cup final this weekend between New Zealand and South Africa. We won't talk about England and Argentina because no one gives a fuck. I hate that game. The bronze medal final needs to just be scrapped. All it does is it just takes players away from returning to their clubs for another week. potentially they get injured and everyone's unhappy because of what a bronze medal that nobody wants. Any disagreement there? Anyone? That was
No,
quite
man,
an aggressive view from me, to be honest. That's my thoughts. I don't care that much, apparently.
So funny.
I mean, the Argentinians are gonna be upset with you because they love to be the bronze ones.
Yeah,
They
sure.
live into this, but fair play for them. They can think about that game actually. But yes, I agree with you. Sorry, Mike.
No. I was going to say you hit the nail on the head about player safety as well. It's been like, I don't know, like 22 weeks together and away from the club. And you know what? Like, it's just sod's law now that you said it. I was thinking in my head, it's sod's law that Gallo gets absolutely ruined this weekend, like Dunny. And it's just, we're without him for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Knocking on wood, it doesn't happen. But like, do you see what I'm saying? Yeah, I agree with you. I agree. There's a risk. England are going for a youthful side though. Like they're playing, some of the youngsters, and then they're giving a swan song to Youngs, and they haven't given one to Laws, oddly. But hey, you got your South African win, my friend. Both of you got your South African wins.
I did. And you know what? We'll talk about that game. Obviously, New Zealand Argentina, unfortunately, was a bit of a non-event. Argentina came out the blocks. Maybe if they'd scored in that first sort of 10 minutes, maybe it would have been a different game. But in the end, New Zealand totally wiped the floor with the Argentinians, and it was a pretty disappointing contest. So we will just sort of breeze straight over that one in terms of that result. And we'll talk about New Zealand a little bit ahead of the final, of course. But England, South Africa won at the death by Pollard. Now, it might not have been the sort of rugby we watched France, South Africa, New Zealand against Ireland, Ottavio, but I imagine you absolutely loved that tactical competition. No tries, just kicks and penalties and interesting scrums and rucks and mauls. I bet you loved it. And box kick central as well. You must have just had a lovely evening.
The try have been scored at the end from Snyman. One of my favorites, actually. So, no, man, look, there are two sides of the world. There is the good and Gotham City. The Springboks are Gotham City. So I love them. No, I love them so much. The approach, how much they are proud of what they do every time they go in the field.
But how bad were they? How bad were they for 70 minutes?
Yeah, they were not the best, actually, not the best, because the believing from England was huge, avoiding to play, let's say, but just having this another crazy approach. Yesterday with Dampat, we were saying about Kriel didn't pass any ball, no carries, nothing. So, yeah, it's tactical, and it's gonna be worst the final, because they're gonna have this approach, and the 7+1 is gonna be something crazy to see. But this is the way South Africa always played, but they know also how to speed it up stuff. Look at the try from turnover against France, for example.
And
heartbreak for you, Mike. The
Hey, at the end of the day, I was just hoping for a good game, and I was there was that meme which it hit home quite nicely. It's that like Voldemort scene right at the end of the Harry Potter. Is like, now you entrust yourself to me, and that's how it sort of felt supporting England as a Northern Hemisphere side. But it just hey, like they gave I as a Northern Hemisphere fan, I was quite impressed that England played to their strength. Well, they played to their strengths, didn't they? And generally, the irony of it is the same strengths that they played to in the first half was their downfall in the second half, because the scrum just capitulated right after Marler and Coles came off and the bomb squad came on. It was just a clear mismatch. But that for the long proportion of the time of that game, they were the better team. It just so happens that South Africa showed their class at the end, and so that was the difference. Fine margins and all that. But yeah, it could have gone either way.
And you know what? I was sitting there. I was sat in a pub, my local pub, which is obviously full of English people wanting England to win, and there was no part of me cheering South Africa on or anything like that. And I did feel, because when I watched Wales against South Africa in the semi-final 4 years ago, I know exactly how it feels for
Ooh,
to sort of play so well, and then for Pollard to come on and score a penalty in the last 2 minutes off a
that's it.
dodgy call. That one against Wales was a dodgy call. That was never a penalty, might I add. Anyway, I'm not bitter about it. And then obviously there's a lot of talk about that scrum penalty as well. And if you haven't seen David Flatman talks about that penalty really, really well, actually. That final scrum penalty that obviously gives South Africa the win. And I did sit there and feel sorry for England, because they left it all out there. However, if you refuse to play, you will get burned. And I
Can I ask a
guess
question?
that is
What did Flat say?
Flat actually said that the call was the right one. It was a
no,
penalty.
okay, cool.
He said, I won't go into it too much because it's too much noisy, boring scrums talk, but he basically
The knee went down first, yeah.
He explains really well. The knee goes down,
Fine,
and
yeah,
then that
he's right.
causes him to destabilize and go in on the angle, blah, 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 blah. But yeah, so that gives us, of course, it gives us New Zealand, South Africa in the final. Why did any of us think it would be anything but those two playing against each other? Ottavio, what are you thinking about that final? Will New Zealand have watched that semi-final, and will they look to try and capitalise on maybe where England didn't? Because the one thing that you could have said about England is that for all their dominance, they never really got far enough ahead to protect it.
That's the point. They never really stretch the results for them, and the same happened with with France too. So what I expect from South Africa is gonna be this tight game, because they're expecting that kind of game. They're gonna be patient for the full game, and there's gonna be such a different approach from those two teams. Also because on one side, South Africa already played with a 7+1 against New Zealand, and New Zealand knows what that means, because in the warm-up match of the Rugby World Cup, when South Africa won in Twickenham, actually, I think,
Yeah.
they were there. They defend pretty well in the first half, in my opinion, even if they were the try arrived. But man, a clash of style, we can say. It's going to be a clash of style, actually. And this is going to be something that we're going to remember after years. A clash of style so big, because that is, for me, what shine on the side. The free flow, let's say, the basic skills in attack, pretty well done by the All Blacks. And on the other side, the contest, turnover and kicking game of South Africa with massive forwards.
Will New Zealand apply the same approach that England did, do you think, or will they try something different? Because I just can't see New Zealand being that. Maybe is negative the right word, but generally it was England's tactic was a negative one, right?
At the end was negative. I don't think with Joe Schmidt and the rest of the team they want to do that kind of game. They want to keep their style, so they're gonna try way to go over the rush defense, and they're gonna try to avoid so many racks as possible with playing the ball, maybe different style of shapes in attack, and see from there a lot of bomb kick too in their opposite 50. That part of the kicking game, yes, but it's not going to be only that. They're going to try weird stuff, but not only that.
Mike, what are your thoughts for that one?
One thing that's impressed me of New Zealand is they have so many different ways they can play and so many different ways they can win. Whereas like South Africa adopted this, high pressured kick chase and, a quick blitz and, a dominant set piece and a dominant maul, and that's sort of the foundations of their game. Whereas I think like New Zealand proved against us that they could play a power game and dominate us, albeit obviously we're not the same sort of level as South Africa, but they can play in a different manner. They can have an offloading game like we saw against Uruguay. They've just got so many like bows. So many arrows to their quiver. They can do so many different things, and I think if they're able to adapt, I think South Africa have had the harder route in. And again, you know, that does make a difference. I think a fresh South Africa against a fresh England, South Africa, it probably would have been a lot different score in favour of South Africa. But you know, it was a lot closer than it was, probably because of that. And I think, you know, depending on how well South Africa can recover, I think the 7-1 thing's maybe slightly forced. If I'm honest, I think it is a slightly forced decision. And if New Zealand have large proportion of the time attacking and South Africa defending, and they have to constantly blitz and make sure they're on side and not give away silly penalties because they're going to get punished at range from the New Zealand kickers. It could be less of a arm wrestle than we think, you know.
I hope so. The 7-1 split is such an interesting dynamic, because I saw somebody put it on Twitter is that Willie LaRue can play 10, he can
15.
maybe play 13, 15 winger. Quagga Smith can play as a centre if needs be, and you know they've got players that can sort of mix it around. So that whilst it sounds like a 7-1, actually probably a little bit more like a 6 and a 2, because Quagga Smith, they've got players that can play in different positions. So, but it is a really interesting one, and I guess if New Zealand try and go for Faf de Klerk really early on, that's where they could probably cause some issues there if they manage to get through to Faf.
So what is going to happen if Faf de Klerk goes out? My opinion, Kolbe goes as
Cheslin.
9.
Yes,
and Willemse move on the wing, maybe with Leroux playing second playmaker 10-15 like 4 years ago.
Yeah, I really hope it happens. You know, I want to see that happen, just to see how Rassie manages to sort of switch everyone around and make everyone playing a different position, because it is what I have found with South Africa and the way they're coached. Like Rassie Erasmus himself, like they are such an interesting team to really dig deep and look at, because there's so much going on there, and they can play so many different ways, and they have become a really interesting team to follow. I'll give them that. And as a podcast at the start of the tournament, who did we predict as our winners? I know I didn't want them to, and I was trying to convince you that France would do it, and I wish they did. Such a shame. The romantic in me, it's such a shame that we're going to potentially see South Africa win. I wanted France to win it, and I said France-South Africa final is what we actually came to, and we ended up. You two outvoted me, I think, and we ended up going with South Africa. So we could still be right. We still could be right. So Mike, prediction.
I don't think anyone expected this New Zealand to turn up, though. Like all the signs were opposite, you know. They're just a tournament team.
I didn't think they'd get to a final, but I definitely thought that they were always going to be a play. I mean, I did have France and Ireland. I really did think would turn up, but you know,
I didn't think they'd be this dominant.
No, never bet against New Zealand and South Africa. That's what we've learned. They've won pretty much. I think how many of tournaments they've won between themselves? They won 6 between them, right?
6.
Yeah. So they're going for a 7. They're going for a potential.
It's going to be a bragging rights match, isn't it?
Oh god, yeah, it's crazy. It should be. I'm hoping for a really good game, and either way, with South Africa involved, it is always interesting. Whatever might happen, so we will very much look.
I hope no red cards in this game, no 50-50 calls. That's the only thing I hope for in this game.
Well, I think the big positive of the fact that it's New Zealand South Africa does mean that I've actually been really disappointed that Luke Pearce hasn't been given a game, especially in the semi-finals. He didn't ref a quarter-final either, did he?
No, I don't think so.
How he, in my opinion, I think he is right up there. Wayne Barnes is one of the best refs in the world. So how he hasn't been given a game, I really don't know. But it feels right that Wayne Barnes is there because probably given everything, he is the best referee on the planet. So with that in mind, I think people are a little bit more at ease that hopefully kind of the refereeing won't come into it. But you never know. Rugby these days, all it takes is one slightly high shoulder from Ebenetbeth away from a red card.
My God.
Because he can't bend down low enough.
Or maybe it's going to be Peter Step Dutoit.
Maybe.
Doing something.
With his
Or
swinging arms.
Scott Barrett.
Yeah, if I was a betting man, I'd put a fiver on a red card this weekend.
Yeah, maybe. Although all of my bets this World Cup have not come off whatsoever, so I'm not betting anymore. Anyway, that takes us up to just a tickle under an hour. I think that is a good place to stop. We've covered the URC, we've covered the World Cup, we've looked into this World League business, and I think that's a good place for us to stop. Boys, thank you very much. Enjoy the weekend. Let's hope for a good game on Saturday, and fingers crossed for Benetton and Zebre as well. But for now, that'll be it from us. Please make sure to subscribe, follow, and share to the podcast. And we will speak to you all again very, very soon. Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.